You everybody for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me one quick favor, see that little black subscribe button on the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Really does help this channel grow, my audience grow, and I appreciate it more than you know. Also, quick thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet $50 on any game. Get up to $1,111 in free bets courtesy of the Betfred Sportsbook. Thank you again. Now, here's the video that you came here for. But there was something that broke late on Saturday night. And there was obviously a development on Sunday, and I want to save it for the end of the show because bluntly, it's a very serious topic with very serious allegations, all of that. And I am very aware that a lot of you listen to this show in the car, with family, with kids. And I just want to say, like, next 10, 12 minutes, going to be a very serious conversation, very serious things. And just be aware of what you're listening to and how you're listening to it here over the next few minutes. But with that said, I do want to wrap with this wild Mel Tucker story. One that I'm sure all of you are probably at least a little bit familiar with here coming out of the weekend. But the bottom line is, I'll tell you, I'll just give you kind of my version of how I kind of experienced this in real time. But it was wild. I was hosting Fox Sports Radio Saturday night. We're on until 2 a.m. Eastern time. And at little after probably midnight, probably a little bit before 1 a.m. Eastern, you see a headline. It says, Mel Tucker accused of sexual harassment. And so my first reaction is, boosters unhappy with that contract that they gave him. They're trying to throw something on his plate to get out of that contract. That was my initial thought. I'm sure a lot of you felt the same way. And then it was about 2 a.m. Eastern time that a report came out from USA Today that had some jarring details. And as a matter of fact, it's actually the exact opposite. It's not that Michigan State is trying to get out of his contract, but in many ways, it feels like they've been trying to cover this thing up because it is a scandal of epic proportions. And so I want to kind of tell you what happened, what the reaction was on Sunday, what's next for Michigan State. But again, one final time, very serious stuff in here, so be careful who you're listening with. The allegations basically stem from this, okay? So there is a woman. Her name is Brenda Tracy, and she is very well known. She is an advocate of victims of sexual assault, okay? She was a woman who herself dealt with sexual assault when she was, like, I'm just going to say it. She was gang raped when she was a younger woman. She survived, and she has become an advocate and an outspoken, advocate on behalf of sexual assault victims. Part of what she does, she goes to all of these major colleges, all of these major campuses, and especially within athletic departments, speaks to teams, usually teams, men's basketball and football, just explaining, hey, like no means no. This is my experience. This is the torment that I've been through. And just treat women with basic respect, right? I mean, I think we all kind of understand that, but that is who she is and what she does. And so Michigan State, over the course of the last 3-4 years, the football program has brought her in multiple times to speak to the team. 2021, I believe, was the first one. They brought her back at one point for the spring game where she was an unofficial team captain. And so she clearly developed a rapport with the Michigan State football program. Well, at some point, Mel Tucker, the head coach at Michigan State, developed, a little bit of a one-on-one, what he believed to be a consensual, something that was more than a friendship. And there are allegations in the report from USA Today that there was 2-3 times that he invited her out places by herself, one-on-one. She said no. But ultimately, what this whole thing stems from is this. And again, we're going to continue with the graphic, honest conversation. It was that at one point he called her on the phone, and his version diverges from her version, etc. But essentially, phone sex occurred. Mel Tucker, and I can't believe I'm using this word on this show, but I have to use it because there's no other way to describe it. He masturbated on the phone while she was on the other end. He claims it's consensual. She claims it was certainly not, and she was very uncomfortable with it. She hangs up, and this ultimately ends up getting reported to Michigan State. As we found out on Sunday, Michigan State found out in December. They launched a Title IX investigation, independent investigators, and here's the part that's important. Mel Tucker admits that the call happened, admits that he masturbated, and basically just contests the part about the fact whether she consented to it or not. Bottom line, let me just say this, and let's get into what happened on Sunday. Bottom line, can't do that pretty much ever. And obviously it led to what happened on Sunday, where Mel Tucker, according to a press conference from Michigan State at 5 p.m. Eastern, has been suspended without pay pending the conclusion of the Title IX investigation. He will go there. There's kind of a hearing, if you will, in early October. But let me just say this, okay? I've been covering college sports a long time. You see similar stories pop up, and this is obviously unique unto itself. I'm here to tell you right now, Mel Tucker has coached his last game at Michigan State. Mel Tucker will ultimately be fired. And in a lot of ways, I'll just be blunt. This reminds me, you know what this actually reminds me of? And I'm not comparing one to the other. But do you remember when Chris Beard got arrested, the Texas basketball coach, back in last December? If you remember, at the time, he was put on paid administrative leave. Why is that? It is so the school can continue an investigation. They can give him due process, but then ultimately they can fire him for cause without paying him the full contract. And so for Mel Tucker, Michigan State is dotting the I's, crossing the T's, making sure that legally they do everything they can so that he can't come back and say he didn't get due process and he was unfairly fired. But once that hearing is done, once all the facts officially come to light in a public forum, he will be done as Michigan State head coach. He is never coaching a game at Michigan again. And it is worth noting, multiple reports came out on Sunday afternoon. Harlan Barnett, I believe, is the name of the defensive backs coach who is taking over on an interim basis. And I saw Brett McMurphy even reported that former coach Mark D'Antonio will come back in kind of an advisory unnamed role. Now, in terms of the reaction to all of the news, and I'm sorry for that long setup, but it felt necessary. In terms of the reaction to the news, listen, well, I'll just say bluntly, inexcusable. And I don't feel like I should have to do this every time, but a couple things. We talked about this with Chris Beard, and I'll talk about it again with Mel Tucker. I understand that everyone is entitled to due process. I understand that everybody is entitled to let the facts come out. What is indisputable right now, based on the facts we have, and stuff is subject to change, is that according to USA Today, in a investigation, Mel Tucker admitted this call happened and the masturbation happened, and it just comes down to, was it consensual? Was it not? How much was it? How much was it not? At the same time, I'm sorry you can't do this. And I'm sorry. And to be clear, for people who are new to me or my show or my this or my that, I'm not a moralist. I do dumb stuff all the time. I have a wife. I'm not a perfect husband. I make mistakes all the time. I did something dumb like 2-3 days ago. My wife was furious at me and she had every right to be. I'm not perfect. But at the same time, you cannot do this if you're anyone, but especially if you are a head football coach. You are the face of a university. You are the face of your football program. You are the highest paid employee at your university. And keep in mind, you have brought in this woman to talk to your 85 players about respecting women, giving them their, respecting women, doing what's right, not whatever. And for you to do this, for you to presume there's some sort, like, you just cannot do this ever. And so there's absolutely no excuse. So Mel Tucker isn't going to survive. He will ultimately be fired. And I think it's worth noting, the school itself is important here as well. I'm not saying this behavior is ever okay anywhere. Not saying it'd be okay at any other school in the country. But at the same time, it's especially true at Michigan State. We all know that Michigan State, tragically, unfortunately, was home for decades to Larry Nassar. Larry Nassar was the U.S. gymnastics coach who also doubled as the Michigan State, one of the team doctors at Michigan State, who we later found out was sexually abusing a lot of young women in the U.S. gymnastics program and at Michigan State. And so for this school to have another situation where you have sexual harassment, making a woman feel uncomfortable, obviously, the Nassar situation is different, but it falls under the same umbrella. You cannot act like this. And if you're Michigan State, I think the next logical question, and I'm not a fire everybody guy, but the fact that this happened in December, the fact they found out about this and they waited until the day it became public for them to actually put Mel Tucker on administrative leave, some people are going to have to pay for that. And some people are going to have to answer tough questions as to whether they should have their jobs as well. Because again, I get due process, but this was something you found out 8, 9, 10 months ago, whatever it was. The fact that you tried to hide it, the fact that you tried to let the process play out without making it public instead of just suspending Mel Tucker at the time, it's a bad look. It just is. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but what I do know in a situation like this, at this particular school, in this particular situation, you cannot wait 9 months and hope it doesn't come out. And then, of course, it comes out right as football season starts. So we'll see what happens. That hearing is in early October. Once that hearing happens, I suspect Mel Tucker will be fired for cause and not get any of his contract. So in terms of the sports-specific angles to conclude here, a couple things stand out. One, I don't want to make light. I don't want anyone thinking that I'm mocking or whatever the whole situation. But Mel Tucker just lost $80 million guaranteed. He had $80 million left on his contract because he couldn't stay out of trouble. And it's just so dumb. You're married. You have a family. You do this, your whole life is going to come crashing down. Maybe there are guys getting away with this stuff, but I just can't even imagine $80 million. Your kids are set up for the rest of their lives. Even if you're a terrible football coach, you're going to get paid every last dollar as long as you don't do something to get fired for cause. And you do it. Again, I don't want to dismiss the severity of what he is accused of. I don't want to dismiss the severity of what this young woman went through many years ago and what she's probably going through now. But from a strictly what are you doing perspective, just stay away. Just go home. Go home to your wife. You don't need to do this. It's just so mind-boggling to me. And then lastly, from a football perspective, I think it'll be fascinating to see what Michigan State does next. Now, again, in the grand scheme, is this what's most important? Absolutely not. I don't want to make it sound like this is what I think matters. But at the same time, Mel Tucker is never going to coach a game again. And Michigan State is going to have a coaching search probably in December. Fascinating to think about, especially because of this. $80 million just got cleared up. All that money you were going to pay Mel Tucker is now going to be available for you to pay somebody else. And so for Michigan State, it'll be fascinating because you can pay the next guy $7, $8, $9 million a year if you want to, because you're not going to be paying Mel Tucker that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, next year, that full Big Ten TV contract starts. So you're going to be making 50, 60, 70 million a year. And so just the question becomes, who is interested in all that? The name that I heard on Sunday, I made a few phone calls. Now, it's not going to make Michigan State fans very happy. I heard the second this came out, Pat Narduzzi from Pitt, the head coach, is already trying to angle his way back in. Was the longtime coordinator under Mark D'Antonio, left. I think he's been a candidate maybe in previous years. I think he sees where things are going with the ACC. I think he sees that Pitt is a tough place in modern college football to win. He's angling for it. I've heard the name Jim Leonard, the former Wisconsin defensive coordinator, was Wisconsin's interim head coach last year. Very successful former player. And then I think you're going to get the big names, and you're going to try to convince somebody to come for the right amount of money. Remember, we're entering a world. The SEC and Big Ten are going to be playing completely different ball when it comes to money and the money that you can offer your head coaches. So we'll see what happens next, and we'll see who could be the next head coach. And by the way, we'll do updates on this as it comes out. But I think right now the thing is Mel Tucker. And I just cannot believe how dumb he is. And I'm sorry. I'm an innocent until proven guilty. I'm a due process kind of guy. But he acknowledged this call happened. He acknowledged the actions that she accused him of actions. And now it's just a he said, she said over how consensual it was. This guy's never going to coach again at Michigan State, just cost himself $80 million. And obviously on the much more serious topic, cannot believe, whatever. I can't believe that he did this to this young woman. And I feel awful that she is in this situation right now.